Okay, hello, welcome to today's event. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com, and we're here for a session all about designing checks in Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. Our speaker today is Albin Lotrich, Senior Technical Consultant at Docentric. It's great to have him with us. As we begin, please do know that we do welcome your questions today. Look for the questions block in the webcast interface. You can ask them at any time. Albin and his team will be taking those questions and answering them after the session ends. So without any further delay, I think we're ready to begin. Albin, I'm going to hand things off to you.
Okay, thank you, Jason, and thank you everyone for joining today's webinar with a very unusual and maybe even slightly thought-provoking title. Nevertheless, I stand by this title. I will demonstrate it in a live demo and explain to you how to drastically increase your productivity when designing and printing checks. If you joined this webinar, you're probably already familiar with the challenges related to implementation of checks in Dynamics 365FO. You probably know the struggles of customizing the design, choosing suitable printer make and model, selecting magnetic ink and check stock vendors, and the endless iterations of development and testing, bank certification challenges, and so on. Not only is this stressful, it's also expensive. One customer of ours told us that they paid a 5-digit amount in US dollars for check customization alone, and the first number didn't start with 1. Let me shortly introduce myself. My name is Albin Lotrich, and I have over 25 years of experience in IT. I'm currently a senior technical consultant at Docentric, and checks are one of the areas where I am specializing. I occasionally speak at conferences, publish blog articles, and present webinars about reporting challenges and solutions in Dynamics 365FO. Docentric is the company behind the general purpose reporting solution, but as you will see today, I will be using it for designing and deploying a check. Instead of having a custom report designer, we decided to build our designer on top of Microsoft Word, a tool that almost everyone is familiar with. You will see during the live demo how powerful and easy to use this solution is. Many of our partners and customers have been using Docentric to successfully design and implement all kinds of reports in their environments, including checks. So we thought to share some of our experiences about this topic with Dynamics 365FO community. When we talk about checks, we can't avoid the fact that they come in many variations. Checks can contain pages with 2 or 3 parts. One of these parts is occupied by a check form itself. The other one, or 2 parts, are stubs, which typically contain information about the invoices paid by the check. The check itself can be in the top or in the bottom part of the form. On the 3-part check, it can also be in the middle. Dynamics 365FO allows you to set some check parameters, as you can see in this image. You can set the page length, as well as top and bottom unprintable margin, which comes handy for fine-tuning the check for printing. Furthermore, you can set the check start position, thus specifying where you want the check to appear. For example, 0 inches means in the top of the page, 3.5 inches positions the check in the middle, 7 inches places it at the bottom of the page, and the number of slip copies determine how many stubs you want. Combine the variations of check positions and number of stubs with the many different check stock used by different vendors, and you can see why it's impossible to avoid some check design customization. However, the layout of the check itself is defined by the SSRS design, and only developers can modify it in Visual Studio. This screenshot shows the design of the check in Visual Studio. As you can see, it is not most user-friendly. For example, if you want to see all the properties of the slip text field, you open its properties, and there you click each individual property to see its values. Often the property is controlled by some expression, so we have to open the expression editor to see it. Then you have to click back and forth a lot to get things done. And this approach gives you flexibility, but it is time-consuming and it's often hard to keep track of all the settings. Now imagine that you have to move labels or fields to fit them on the pre-printed or black check stock form. The developer has to make all these changes, compile the code, and deploy it to the test system. The users start testing it, and they may then need to request further adjustments from the developer. And this cycle then repeats itself until everything on the check is positioned properly. These cycles can easily go on for days or even weeks. And the complexity doesn't end here. You can further choose between the pre-printed or blank check stock. The pre-printed version may already contain everything except the recipient and the amount. So labels, logos, ABC codes, check numbers, and microline may already be included, or maybe just some of them. Any combination is possible. The advantage is that you don't need to do that many design modifications on the check, and the bank certification process may be faster. The disadvantage is that you have to store pre-printed check stock much like you would store cash, because the risk of theft or blank pre-printed checks is much higher, and it's easier to misuse them. Even the printers where checks are printed on pre-printed check stock paper need lockable trays, as you can symbolically see, if you want to be safe. On the other hand, you can use blank check stock. Its main advantage is that it gives you complete freedom over designing the check. Storing such a check stock is not an issue because no sensitive information is included on it yet, but it has its disadvantages too. It makes more effort and time to design a check that will successfully pass the bank certification process. In particular, the microline position is very important. Finding a suitable printer make and model as well as magnetic ink vendor can be challenging too. At Docentric, we work with many Dynamics 365FO implementation partners worldwide. We're in contact with many of their developers and functional consultants, and they're telling us that practically every check implementation for their end customers is unique when it comes down to details. Okay, after knowing all these details, let's suppose you need to design a check as efficiently as possible. Say you need to satisfy the following requirements. You need to design a check on 3-part blank check stock paper with the check form in the top and the 2 stubs below. The stubs will contain information about the invoices paid by the current check. Both stubs will basically contain the same information. The only difference is that the second stub in the bottom will contain a copy watermark. Let's assume you're a functional consultant or a power user. Now, how fast could you design such a check and deploy it? And how many other people would you have to involve in the process? If you use standard SSRS, you wouldn't be able to do much more than write a specification for the developer. Then you would have to find a developer, wait for him or her to finish the design, and then you would start testing, coordinating additional fixes with the developer, and then testing some more, and so forth. This could take days. Today, I will show you the alternative. My goal is to design a check from a blank page to a deployed, fully featured check design. And I want to do it in about the same time as it would take me to go out to have a lunch. I'm sure you agree that this is quite an ambitious goal. Okay, we're now at a point where I will show you a live demo of designing the check from start to end. I want you to remember this. What I'll show you in this demo is a complete process for the creation of a fully functional check from start to finish. I will only skip some text box positioning and word table designing steps because I don't want to waste our time, and you probably didn't join this webinar to watch that. Other than that, I will show you every necessary step. There will still be a bit of clicking, and I hope that you will not lose your focus, but you will see, however, that working with Docentric Designer is quite straightforward and easy. I will need maybe a little over 30 minutes to finish the design and deploy this check. If I did all the word table design and everything that I would actually replace by copying and pasting today, it would maybe take me 10 minutes longer, which is still quite a good time. If we think again how expensive SSRS designing can be, I have saved quite a bit of money. Okay, so let's start the stopwatch and let's go live. I'm going to open the Docentric workspace, and now I'll show you how we can get the data schema and some test data for the template. Details of these actions are beyond the scope of today's webinar. However, it basically takes 2 steps to get the schema and the test data. First, I will select the report that I am working on, and then I will just select generation options and select that I want to create so-called DDSP file. DDSP stands for Docentric Data Source Package File, and this is the file that contains the schema and some test data. Then I have to run the check report, and the DDSP file will download as well. To run the check report, I will open Vendor Payment Journal Form. I will select an entry, click lines, and generate payments. On the next two forums, I already have the settings I need. So I'll just click OK. And the check report now executes, and the results are displayed on screen. At the same time, I download a DSP file in the browser. So this is not really what I'm interested in. I'm interested in this file here. This file contains the data that was contained in the checks that I just displayed, and it also contains the schema. All right, I don't need D365FO for now. And now I'll start with the blank document in Word. Okay, now I'll start designing the template in Microsoft Word. From now on, everything I will do will happen in Word. In order to have a little bit more control over the text, I will first modify the paragraph settings, where I want the before and after spacing set to 0. I previously measured the blank check stock paper I'll be using, so I measured that I need 1/4 of an inch margin on all edges. So this is what I'm going to do next. So I will set the layout, 1/4 of an inch on all edges, and the header and the footer will be 2/10 of an inch from the edges. Okay, the border is now set as I wanted. Now I said that I needed to print it on the blank check form, which looks like this. So this is the scan of my paper check stock that I'm using. And in this case, the check is in the top, and then I have 2 stubs. And that's already measured just as the exact sizes of the paper is. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to insert this as a background image in my document so that I will be able to design a check just by adding and positioning check labels and fields over it. You know, what you see is what you get fashion. So it will be very user-friendly, and I will always be in control of what I'm doing. I will just insert this in the header because I want it to appear on every page. So I'll insert it as an image. I'll just increase the size a little bit. Okay, my downloads, I have this file. Good. I'll just set the text wrapping behind text, and I will fix position on the page, and that's all it takes. So it is now inserted in the image as the background, and I can continue with my design. Now in the next step, I'm going to insert the file that I have generated previously. Docentric AX, which I get when I install the Docentric Designer, has possibility to insert this file. This is it. And as soon as I insert it, I can see that I get additional panes. So I have the data source pane and the element tree pane. And the data source pane gives me the information about the structure of my data. So as you can see, these are the fields that I can use, and there are also some collections like the payment transaction, which contain the information about invoices paid by the current check. And I can also have more checks in this record. So also this is practically a collection, each one containing one check data. Now I want to display or actually bind this information to the template. Firstly, I'm going to enter a few paragraphs so that I have got some content. I will select it, and then I will be using tagging elements. Now the menu ribbon here gives me first the possibility to actually show or hide some of the panes. And then it also gives me possibility to insert tagging elements. Tagging elements are practically placeholders for data. So I have the field tagging element, image tagging element, and then I also have the list and group, which work with collections of data. So in my case, I need the list because I want all the checks to be listed in my template. The binding is to check TMP element, and that's it. Now, I want every check to be printed on the separate page. So what I have to do, I have to insert the page break. And previous to that, I'm going to turn the live preview on. Live preview gives me immediate feedback what my end document is going to look like. So I can see right now it is still empty with just the background image. But as soon as I will now insert the page break, an interesting thing is going to happen. As you have seen, this has suddenly multiplied. Why did it multiply? Because right now, every check that I have in my test data is going to be on the new page. Even though this template is still empty, has nothing but my list. My list already knows how many checks I got, and that's why I got this many pages. Okay, now we come to the next step. Now somehow I have to provide a way to insert information on this check part. So I have got 3 partitions. First one is for the check, and then partition for the first stub and for the second stub. And the easiest way to control it precisely is by inserting a text box first, position the text box that covers this partition, and then fill the text box with actual data. Text box can be precisely positioned on the page, and that's why it's very handy to use it. So let me do that next. I have to be within the list tagging element when I'm inserting the text box, and let me insert it now. Okay, and now I am going to position text box just approximately as I want it to be on the page. And then I have to set some settings. I will fix position on the page, so it will be relative to the margin. And the top position in this case is 3/10 of an inch. I know these measurements because I have measured it earlier, and I know exactly which measures I need to enter here. Okay, so that part is done. Let me just do some shaping of this text box. I'm going to say that this is going to be containing no fill, so it's actually transparent. And I will also remove line later on, but for now I will leave this border line so that I know where the boundaries of my text box are. Okay, and I could already start entering the information about the check now. But of course, first of all, I would also have to insert the 2 other check boxes. In order to save some time, because I would just be doing the same thing, I already have prepared a check template which has already these 3 partitions entered, and it looks like this. So basically 3 times the partition. Each partition is fixed position on the page, exactly where it has to be. And right now, when I would want to enter the check and start designing, if, for example, now I have check on the top, but so I will start entering check information here. But if I had check in the middle, I would start entering it in this part, or in the bottom in that part. So you see, you have got quite a bit of control where you want something to be, and you are assured that it's not going to move because the sizes and the position of the checkbox is just as it has to be. Okay, so let me now continue with designing the check. So what is the best approach? You know, the check, if we take a look how it is going to look like, you see we have got rows, and the problem with check is it has to be positioned exactly where it is, and no unexpected thing should happen. For example, if this row is longer, if this text is longer than what it fits here, it must not happen that it would simply expand. And you have to think this kind of things in advance. And in this case, you see I have got sufficient space to actually display it in 2 rows, but practically this is 1 cell in Word. Using word tables is very handy way to insert and control this kind of content. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to insert a table, and then I'm going to position the row heights and the column widths to get it as I want it. So let me do that. I have calculated that I would need 5 columns and 7 rows, like this. Then I wouldn't need borders, so I remove them. And the next thing, as I have mentioned earlier, I must not allow the text in the table to wrap into the new line and thus change the size of the row, and consequently the entire table. So I will set all rows to exact height. So the height in this case would be, I'll start with 2/10 of an inch exactly. And then I would modify each additional row as I would need it. I'm not going to do that because this is nothing but formatting the Word table. So right now I'm just going to delete this table. And I'll just insert already formatted table, which I have prepared earlier, which has already properly designed cells with appropriate row height, and some cells are already merged. So let me just quickly show you what's in here. As you can see, 2 columns and 2 rows are merged for this part and here as well. Then I have different row heights. I have the bottom border for some of the cells. Then I'm using also vertical alignment. For example, this is aligned to the bottom and things like that. So it's very handy to do it like this. And the only missing thing here is now the data that we need there. So let's compare with what our final results should look like. So I'm going to insert the bank information here, and the logo comes in the middle. And then I'll have the check number, ABC code, and the check date. Then I have the recipients and the amount in words, and then the signature, and finally the marker line. So this is what I'm going to insert next. And you will see just how easy it is doing this with Docentric. Right now I'm going to start inserting the field tagging elements. So the template is already aware what kind of data I have. They know that right now I am working on an individual check. Template knows which fields are available. So when I click field tagging element, I already have the fields available for the current check. So the first one is the bank name. And then I have the bank address next. You can see I just click and select the right field. It's very easy to do. I'm just checking if the size and the formatting is correct. So this one is 9, it's bolded. This one is 9 and not bolded. Then here I will insert the logo. Logo is stored on the legal entity, and I will just insert the image. This is in general data current company logo. So the image is bound. Now I will just reshape it to be more appropriate for the kind of logo I'm using. Next, here is the check number. So I just insert the check number field. Check number. Then ABC code. And the date. So the check date. Now dates need to be formatted. In this case, I want to have format where month is written in words and days and years are numbers. Okay, let me set it to be italic. All right, now here I have to insert the recipient. So let me do that. Recipient name is the next field, and here's the amount. This amount is entered as text because it contains asterisks. So I just insert it, I don't have to format it. Here I have amount in words. And then I'll insert the signature later. Let me now insert the marker code. Marker line, which is here, and it already has the correct font. If I needed to set the font, I can just use the word functionality. One of the fonts which I have installed is also the marker, so that it contains the correct information. Now this marker line has to be positioned precisely, and with the blank check forms, it's very critical that it is positioned exactly the way the bank requires. For example, if I wanted to move it up and down, I always have the ability, just to move it like this. If, however, I would have to move it more to the center or more to the right or to the left, I can always use this size. With the resizing of the columns, I can achieve the same. So I have quite good control, and the same for any other fields. I mean, I could just increase the height of the row, or maybe just change the width of the cells, and I can get pretty much pixel perfect positioning of labels and data. Okay, so the check now is done. Let me quickly see how it looks in the preview. So this check looks like we want it. So next we're going to insert the signature. Let's do that now. Now the signature is also stored as the transparent image. And because it is positioned on the same place on the page, and since the signature is only included with the first record of the check, we're going to insert it in the header, just as we did earlier, and we'll use text box to precisely position the space where we want our signature. Okay, so this is it. We're going to remove the content. So we want to have it to be transparent and with no line. And we'll insert the image in the center of it. And now we can already insert the centric image. So the image actually came with the data. It's in the check TMP, check signature. So this is where we find it. And I said that we only have to take the first record because there is the signature is stored only in that one. This is how we filter it to get only the first record. And we should be all right. Let's just resize this image a little bit more to reflect how it actually looks. Let's close the header. And right now we can save this work. And now let's preview it. As you can see, the check is now finished. Okay, let's continue. We still need to design the stubs. When we are talking about designing the stubs, we have two options. Now, in the check data, we have one field, which is called slip text, and this field already contains a string which is formatted with line feeds and with spaces so that it actually displays the information about the invoices paid by the current check, one row after the other, nicely in the columns, even though it is all written as a string. So we're going to just use that here. The thing that we need to make sure first is that we are using characters that have the same width. So I'm going to set the font to Courier New, and then I will insert this field. As we said, it's slip text. Okay, so let's see how it looks now. Okay, we already have the information about invoices paid by this check. In this case, it's only one, but it doesn't matter. If there were more, there were more. But the problem here is we cannot affect any formatting. We have to have the font which have characters of the same width. We cannot replace columns or maybe swap them or do anything that we would want normally. Maybe some bold formatting of individual columns or maybe different sequence of the columns. We cannot do anything. We can just take it as it is. And our requirements is that first we need to have this information about the company, and then we want to have the information about the invoices nicely formatted. And in our case, we could easily select in what kind of order we would want to have these columns, and we would have complete control. And last thing, we would also have this copy watermark. Okay, let's start. And in this case, I just do the same thing as I did earlier. So table comes handy here as well. And I have already prepared one, which I'm going to reuse now. So it's the second one with the labels and column widths and rows already prepared. So I'm just going to copy and paste it in order to save time to do that. Okay, so this is just the table, empty table. I do have the header for the data. And right now I'll start inserting what it takes. So the first thing, I want to insert the company name. This is in general data current company name. And then I have comma, and then it's a company address. So let me insert the company address as well. It's general data current company, primary postal address, address. Okay. Now the name will be printed with bold text. And let me see how it looks like. And there will be one problem we'll have to fix. As you can see, the address is written in several lines because it contains line fits, and we'll have to get rid of these line fits and have it printed all in one line. So let's fix that. So we can fix that very easily. We can just edit this expression. The Docentric Designer has a very powerful expression editor where you can choose among different functions. Let's say string functions contain the function replace. And what I'm going to replace, I'm going to replace line fit with comma. Okay, and when I take a look at the result now, I can see that now it's in one line. Nice, that's what I want. Okay, let me start entering the rest of the fields. First will be the check number again, and then the vendor information. So it's the recipient name. And, you know, I could easily do all kinds of formatting here. For example, I could make it bold if I wanted to. Okay, now I'll start entering the information about the invoices paid by this check. Now it could be more than one invoice, of course. That's why we need to have them in a list as well. So I will select this entire line. This is where I want. Okay, now I'll get rid of this so that I have a little bit more space. Okay, select entire line. And this line will now contain the list, and this list will be bound to check payment transaction collection. And I'll also sort my invoices by invoice date, for example. Okay, now the list is there, and I'll start inserting the fields. You see, now when I'm inserting the list, the designer knows that right now I'm inserting the check payment transactions, and it offers me only the fields which are available in this part of the data. So I need invoice ID as the first field, currency is the next. Invoice date is the next one. Dates always have to be formatted, as I mentioned earlier, but in this case, it's just going to be the short date format. And then we have the amounts. First, it's the gross amount. So this is the invoice amount in currency. It needs to be formatted as well to decimals and the 1000 separators. Cash discount, formatted, and the payment amount is the last one. Payment amount currency, formatted. Okay. And finally, also the total. Now for the total, I have two options. I could use the summary field, and I would use the check payment transaction collection and summarize it on payment amount currency. But since I already have the calculated field in the check, I'm just going to use that one. And this is the amount currency, which I need to format, of course. Okay, let's take a look how our template looks now. Good. Well, this is already looking pretty good now. Now there are still something. I'm going to explain what this line means, and at the end we'll insert the copy watermark as well. And maybe we could just make a little bit more space between this data and the next one. So let's do that first. I could just draw the line, and then I will go to table properties and change vertical cell alignment to the bottom. Okay, so I have got a little bit more space. Good. And now let me explain what this line means. This check stub has got limited space, and it can fit 7 rows of invoice information. What about if there is more than 7? Well, in that case, I want it to display only this information, so and so many invoices paid by this check, see payment advice for details. But if there is less than 7 invoices, then I don't want to see this line, I just want to see the data. Okay, so how to do it? First of all, let me insert the count of invoices here, which is in the field here. And I have to format it because it's numeric. In this case, it will be no decimals. Okay, so if we take a look how this looks now, it tells how many invoices paid by the check. But now we will insert the logic which will show or hide it. The Docentric designer has got Iftagging element which can show or hide parts of the document. Now in this case, I'm going to select this whole line, and now I'll insert the expression. The expression will return either true or false. If it returns true, the content will be displayed. If it returns false, it will be hidden. So the criteria here is if this count is more than 7, in that case, show the line. And in the same fashion, sorry, I have to hit this row now. Okay. Now, in the same fashion, I'm going to show or hide the information about the invoices, except that in this case, the expression will be if the transaction count is less or equal 7, then display invoice information, otherwise hide it. Practically, this means that either the information for the invoices is displayed or the other information. Okay, so that practically brings us almost close to the end of this design part. The only thing missing here is the copy watermark. So how I'm going to insert copy watermark? Again, it's going to be positioned on the last tab of the check. It's going to be on the same position on every page. So I'll just insert it in the header as text box. So let me drag it down so I have a little bit better control over it. It will contain the word copy. It's going to have a large size. It's going to be bold, and I'm going to use some shade of gray, like this. I will set text wrapping. I'll fix position on the page. I'm going to rotate it a little bit, like this, and I'll just drag it down to where I want it on a page. Let's say something like this. And finally, I'll just make it transparent. No fill, no line. And that's it. And when we're talking about transparency and the lines, let's get rid of the other border lines. So no line for this text box, and for the second one, and for the first one. Okay, this looks already pretty decent. Okay, let me see. Okay, let me save it first, just to be sure. All right, this is practically what we needed. The last thing we need to do before we deploy this check is, since we already have this background image pre-printed on our form, we don't need this background image anymore. We have just used it so that we could position the content exactly where we want it to. In practically what you see is what you get fashion. Now we're going to remove this background image and deploy this check. So that's our final step. Let's do it. I'll open the header, select the image, delete it, save it. Let me close and preview it. Okay, this is what will go to the printer. Practically, that's exactly what we needed and what we wanted. Fine, I will now save this. And I'll show you also the deployment part. Okay, deployment is very easy in D365FO. What you need to do is, okay, first I don't need to have any more generations of DDSP files. Okay, this is my setup. I'm going to add my new template. I'll give it some unique name. Let me call it new. Save it. And now I will attach the template file which I have just created. Now, since this is a Word file and D365 has to find it somewhere, I have different options where I want it to be stored, either Azure, SharePoint, or file system. I'm going to choose Azure, upload it, browse it. This is the template which we have generated and created. Okay, successfully there. And when I set it at default, this is now deployed. So I have now completed all the steps necessary and the check is now fully deployed. And I will now see if this is indeed so. So let me just change the status of the same check which I have printed earlier. And let me just generate payments once more. And this time I will get the result on my new check template. Ta-da! Done. As you can see, our work has been done. So I have spent maybe 35-40 minutes and my check is successfully designed, created from blank page and deployed in D365FO. Okay, I'll now return back to slides to do the wrap up. Okay, so I think I've earned the dessert. I've shown you how powerful the Docentric reporting solution is for the functional designer or power user. We've seen that we can do all the design and testing in Microsoft Word. And last but not least, you can deploy your reports to Dynamics 365FO all by yourself. And there is no need to involve either developers or the DevOps team. So I hope that you like what you've seen during this webinar. I invite you to go to our website and request either product demo or maybe download one of our editions. If you don't want to try our full edition, you can also give a try to a Docentric free edition, which is successfully used in hundreds of companies around the world. The free edition doesn't come with the designer, but it contains many other interesting features. So I invite you to stop by and see what Docentric has got for you. So a big thank you for the end for taking your time and attending my session. You're also welcome to email your questions or comments directly to me. I wish you all a nice day, and I'm turning it back to Jason now to do the wrap up for today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Albin. Great job, and thanks for the presentation and all that information and demonstration. I'd like to thank everyone in the audience as well for attending today. As always, we do welcome your feedback and your questions. But with that, we will conclude today's event. Have a good day.